Hello.
Hey, everybody. How are you tonight?
Hi.
Well, I got to do my. Doing fine.
Expand still
Top
full.
right hand corner. Just will expand it. There you go. But
Hey, Pam.
Hi, Pam.
Welcome.
Thank
We got all kinds of fun stuff tonight. So I think it looks like just about everybody's checked in. If anybody else shows up, I'll try to smoothly let them in without interrupting our content tonight. But we got a lot to cover. So I think we'll go ahead and get going.
Okay.
All right, so we got a little bit of a theme going on here tonight. Let's see if I can get the music to shut off. We've got a 70s theme for a number of reasons. One, my hair. I haven't got it cut yet. And two, we're going to be going back to the future to take a look at some pictures from way back in time. All right, let me cut this audio. All right, we're just going to stop the music for a minute. Yeah, still haven't had a chance to get a haircut. I sort of thought I had a Bee Gees thing going on, so that's what we went with for tonight's theme. But I'm going to go back to my childhood because some of the recent events have me going back to a time in the 70s when I learned a lot about moths. But before we get to that, I actually wanted to go ahead and let's see, we're going to go to some late breaking nature news. This happened on my walk. No. On my walk here, let's go ahead. Some of you may recognize this building. This is Davis School in St. Charles. It's up 3 doors down from where I live. As you look at it, you'll see built in the late 50s, early 60s. It's got a chimney here. And for the last few weeks, I have been hearing chimney swifts. And I always figured, you know, chimney swifts are a bird. They're an insectivore. They're a bird that flies around all day long. They're really not good at perching. Their feet are really weak, so they don't spend time in trees. When they're out and about, they're foraging, they're catching insects. They only go down into their chimney, which is actually where they roost at in the evening or when they are feeding their young. And I've been looking for the source of the chimney swift sounds that I've been hearing in my neighborhood for several weeks now. Never even occurred to me that this little chimney, let me see if I can get the arrow on it here. See this little chimney on top of Davis School? It apparently has a nesting pair of chimney swifts in it. Now this is the kind of thing we don't want to spread around too far and wide, but I know I can trust you guys to you know, keep it quiet. But it's something I'm going to keep watching and maybe give you some more updates on, because any day now, I would think the young in that nest are going to be able to come out and forage on their own. I saw both parents go down within a couple of seconds of each other. I didn't stick around long enough to see them come out because these guys over here, they're playing catch. And I think they thought I was stalking them because I was standing there and I was staring. I was trying to make it obvious that I was looking up at the sky, but they actually turned around and stared at me for a minute. And then when I got my camera out, I thought they were going to come over and tell me to scram. So I just took a quick picture and then moved on. But anyway, you might have similar experiences in your own neighborhoods. If you hear chimney swifts, I'll see if next week if I can play a recording of what the sounds sound like, just to refresh your memory. But if you hear chimney swifts, it would be good to see if you could track down where they might be nesting at or roosting at. So anyway, that's tonight's late breaking nature news. We're gonna move ahead now and go to what's our featured story tonight. If you happen to catch last week's column, we were talking about imperial moths. And Laura McKenzie, I don't know if you're checked in, but this was a...
Yep, I'm here, Pam.
Hey, Laura. So
Hi, Pam.
you texted that this was from your daughter Elizabeth's front yard over
Yep.
on Boulevard in Geneva, and you texted this on Saturday or Sunday morning?
Yeah, around then. Yeah.
Something like that.
It was on the weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, it was on the weekend, and it was a few hours. I'll admit it was a few hours before I was able to get over there, and you know, time marches on. By the time I got there, those imperial moths were in the exact same position.
They're having a good time.
Very, very intent on their mission there. And it was the coolest thing. I'm so grateful that you let me know about these things because I've got a bit of a history with imperial moths that goes back, as we said, several decades. But before we get into that, I just wanted to point out, obviously we have something going on here. And the angle of the photo is a little bit misleading because we do have a male and a female imperial moth. Imperial moths are giant silk moths. And so their wingspan is, you know, about the size of an adult palm, or I'm sorry, including the fingers too, you know, 5 inches or more for a wingspan, which is a good size moth. The females, and the female is the one that's facing up here, pointing upwards. They tend to have more yellow in their color, and they tend to be larger. The males have more dark. This is sometimes described as purple or lavender, and depending on how the light hits it, that's the way it can look. Right here, it almost looks like a piece of burnt toast, but there was a definite purple cast to these dark hues on the male. Males are smaller. Now, the angle that I took it at, I was closer to him, so he looks a little bit bigger. And then also notice he's got his wings flared out pretty good, and she's got her wings tucked in pretty well. So if they were, say they were pinned in an insect collection, and they were some sort of circumstance where their wings would be sticking straight out, she would indeed be larger than him. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Pam, so why do you have a history with moths? Well, this actually goes back, and some of you may have heard this story before. This goes back to a book I read as a little girl. It was given to me by our next door neighbors, actually their mom, Grandma Merrick. Grandma Merrick grew up in the late 1800s, and this was a book that she bought for her daughters to read in the early 1900s. It's called The Girl of the Limberlost by Jean Stratton Porter. Limberlost was a large swampy area in northeastern Indiana. There's not a whole lot left of it now, although preservation efforts have kind of helped it regain some of its former glory. But Jean Stratton Porter was a young adult fiction writer, quite a popular writer actually in the early 1900s. And she wrote this book amongst others, and it had a wonderful sideline of all these different moths. The story revolves around Elnora Comstock. I may have mentioned her, was it just last week? this is a young girl who was kind of, her family didn't have a lot of money. Her dad had died actually the day she was born. And so she made her fortune, well, not really a fortune, but she made the money she needed to go to school by collecting moths. Back at that time, that was a fashionable thing to have bits of nature on display, especially if you had the money to pay someone to do it for you. So she could make a complete collection. Now, I don't know what a complete collection consisted of, but she could get $300 of it, which even today is a pretty fair amount of cash. And then, you know, she did the math. If she did that times 3, she could get herself through college. So she decided that was how she was going to make her fortune. And what's neat is throughout the story, there's all these, the story is about how Elnora kind of blossoms from sort of a awkward young girl into this beautiful young woman. And she has a love interest, as you can see here. This is Elnora and this is Philip. And they're not actually collecting moths here, they're picking violets, but you know, there's all these neat little biographical or biological graphical bits in the book about the moths of that area. And then she'll weave little bits into the conversation, like, oh, we must be thinking about supper, Mother, said Elnora, while she set the wings of a cecropia with much care. I mean, there's just all these bizarre little references to her vocation at the time of collecting moths. Well, the imperial moth actually plays a really pivotal role in the story because Elnora's love interest, or actually her rival, is Edith Carr. Edith and Elnora both are going after this fellow, Philip. And lo and behold, look at Edith's gown here. It is designed after the imperial moth. In fact, there's even, there was a passage that I didn't put in there where Philip noticed that even her lavender shoes matched the color of the lavender feet of the imperial moth. So it's, you know, it sounds hokey and corny, and maybe in today's times it is, but it's a neat story. And it kind of reveals a side of Jean Stratton Porter. You know, she made her fortune herself, not by collecting moths, but by writing young adult fiction. And but she was a naturalist at heart, and she was so dedicated to that pursuit that she actually published a separate book called Moths of the Limberlost. And this, I'm eyeing a couple of books online, copies of this book at used bookstores. The original versions with Jean's own illustrations in them are a little pricey, you know, maybe depending on condition, $100 to $200. But she wrote the text and she did all the illustrations too. These are Jean's illustrations that she actually painted. These are the color plates, some of them from the book, that she then went into the life history of all these different moths that were featured in the charming story of Elnora Comstock, growing into a beautiful, well, we would say butterfly, but in this case, it would be a beautiful moth of a young woman. So, Laurie, your story actually touched a chord with several other people too. And these pictures came from all over. The one there on the left is from a gentleman. He said, "Dear Rosato, we read your column. We read your column with great interest. And the picture you published of 2 imperial moths caught our eye. I collected butterflies and moths as a young boy. In the 1960s, there were always plenty to be found, and I found quite a variety. However, I'd never seen one like the one you printed. 4 years ago, we spotted a moth that looked just like that in the Rock River. We rescued it with a paddle, as you can see here on the left, and put it on dry land. It was quite impressive. I would estimate a 6-foot wingspan. Even through all my years of collecting bugs, I had never seen anything like it until I saw your article, Mystery Solved. So Laura, thanks to you for that. That was
Oh, yay.
out in, well, out west of here. Not exactly sure where they live, but they felt they should write and tell us about their rescue of the female.
Oh,
Now over here on the right, this was from Sue Castanier. She writes, I read your article in the Herald News this past weekend. I had to share my pictures. I found this beauty last Monday at my office. She died later that day, but she left a legacy. Check this out. Today, her eggs appear to be changing as the little caterpillars become evident. So check this out. Not only did she find a female imperial moth, but the moth had already mated and laid eggs, and the eggs are starting to develop. I just wanted to share with you that there are more imperial moths in the making. That's from Sue from Morris, Illinois. So that kind of raises the question, because we've had this activity now in the area, and you know, of the giant silk moths we have in the area, you know, we've got the Luna moth, we've got the Polyphemus. Those are probably the two we see the most of. Then there's the Cecropia, which we see in some areas. And then every once in a while, we'll see these imperial moths. I think I mentioned in the column, this was, Laura, the ones you told me about, that's only the third time I've seen them, and only the second time I've seen the live ones.
cool.
First time was right after we opened Hickory Knolls. There was one that had just probably beat itself silly on the parking lot, which we tried to keep low, but they were still, they're brand new lights next to a wooded area. So that one was not alive anymore. And we actually kept it for a long time because it was so cool. And then a few years later, there was one over here on the Baker Building in downtown St. Charles. And then really, I hadn't heard anything about imperial moths until your text, Laura. So
I'm so glad.
yeah, well, we've got a little bit more to the story. So here's is Sue from Morris, Illinois. This is her picture of the the imperial moth eggs on the side of the building. This is a photo I got last Labor Day weekend. This is what those eggs turn into. Now these caterpillars are ginormous. They are maybe from, I don't know, maybe 6 inches long. They were longer. The one that I found was longer than my middle finger, and really thick too. And about the size of a cigar. And they actually can be found in two different hues. This one was a green one. This was found, interestingly enough, over by Wild Rose School in St. Charles. But they can sometimes be like kind of a purplish brown. They look like a hairy cigar. But they're, the other giant silk moth caterpillars are kind of, I don't know, winsome, chubby, cute. This thing makes people nervous. I mean, not only is it huge, but it's kind of hairy, but it's not a cute peach fuzzy hairy. It's a sort of a, like, hairy chin kind of hairy. And it's got these projections here above the head, which are, meant to scare potential predators away if the hairs aren't enough. Those eggs, like Sue sent us, and hopefully there's some, Laura, where your imperial moths were hanging out there on Anderson Boulevard in Geneva. It's going to take from now till, like I said, this was Labor Day weekend. So what is that? Maybe say 6 weeks or so for the caterpillar to attain this size. Now it will go into wintertime in a cocoon or a pupa, and then it will emerge sometime the following in the following summertime. So this is what to be on the lookout for as we get into late summer and early autumn, or these big guys here. And you can kind of see why Jean Stratton Porter chose the imperial moth to be kind of pivotal in her story of Elnora Comstock. this kind of epitomizes what we would think of as awkward looking. And yet the imperial moth is so graceful and elegant, and it's a great parallel for a youthful coming of age story. So a couple of you, I know Kim Haig, you've sent me some things. We have just wrapped up our annual homage to moths in National and actually International Moth Week. I thought it might be fun to take a look at a couple other moths that are pretty common in this area. These two were hanging out on my back door. Let's see, this would have been about a month ago. It was towards the end of June. And they just kind of crack me up. There's clearly something going on here. We've got a smaller one and we've got a larger one that are of the same species. What I was noticing though was that orange up here on their heads. So I was kind of trying to figure out, okay, what do we have here? Why is there this bright burst of orange with all the rest of the strabness? And then I started looking at this bad toupee look they've got going on, and it made me think of, do you remember the Gruesomes? They were on the Flintstones from time to time. It was kind of the Flintstones version of like the Addams Family. I remember the little boy had a pet spider named Schneider. It's always been a goal of mine to get one of those myself. But this hair on the Gruesomes really reminded me of the bad toupee look of these moths here. That orange actually continues down on the rest of the body. You can see orange and black, orange and black, orange and black. Now this gives us a clue as to how these moths spent their salad days of their youth. These are the adult version of the milkweed tussock moth. Now, kind of a funny coincidence. Yesterday, I believe it was, a woman walked into Hickory Knolls and she said to our front desk person, "I've brought you some monarch caterpillars." And he's like, "Oh, great, we've got some right here." So they put her monarch caterpillars in with the other ones that we were rearing there on the front desk, and the lady left and the front desk person went back to attending to the front desk. And then our supervisor came in and said, "Oh, hey, I hear we got some more milkweed or monarch caterpillars." And he looked in the caterpillar rearing cage that we have, and lo and behold, they were not monarchs, but they were these guys, the milkweed tussock moth. Now, when you have milkweed and you get a monarch caterpillar, that's usually on that plant. I mean, if you're really lucky, you might get 2, and under extraordinary circumstances, you might have 3 monarch caterpillars on a plant. But if you get milkweed tussock moths, you're gonna get dozens. We've had them show up in a couple different places on our milkweed. Whereas a monarch caterpillar will feed heartily, they will rarely defoliate a milkweed plant. But if you find that your milkweed has gone from having lots of lush leaves and growth to having next to nothing, chances are pretty good you probably got visited by some marauding tussock moths. Joan Kramer, who manages our native plant demonstration garden over at Potawatomi Community Center, and she also helps out in the gardens at Hickory Knolls too. She can grow anything and make it look beautiful. She found some of these and wanted to know, are they good or are they bad? Well, that's something, in nature we don't usually talk about good and bad because everything just kind of is. We tend to think of invasive species as bad, but if you think about what they're up to, they're really just doing what they were made to do. They just happen to be succeeding at it extremely well. So the milkweed tussock moth caterpillars, they are native, and really their role is to help control milkweed. We've put a lot of emphasis on milkweed these days because it's a food plant for the monarch butterfly. But it can get weedy, especially the common variety. So having something like the milkweed tussock moth caterpillars on hand to sort of curb or control some of that growth is not a bad thing. So anyway, the moths, I don't know if they're still around or not. After, a lot of times the adult insects, once they're done laying eggs, they don't survive for that long. I'm not positive what the life expectancy of an adult moth is, but I know for sure that these tussock moths are just about everywhere right now, anywhere that there's milkweed. And then continuing with our moth theme, I wanted to share a recipe. We tried this, let's see, this was last fall is when I took this photo, but I used this same mixture again just a couple weeks ago. We did a program called Nature After Dark, but moths are attracted to light, and we see that all the time with our porch lights, and how they're drawn to that. It almost kind of blinds them, and then once they start circling, they can't get away. But you can actually use your porch light if you want to kind of magnify the effect that it has on moths. You can take a white sheet and tape it up so that the glow from your white porch light hits that white sheet. And you'll get all kinds of moths. You'll also get things like lacewings, which are a really pretty green insect with a very fine, finely veined wing. I just had let a lacewing out of my kitchen last night that had come in with the dogs. You'll get other night flying insects as well. But so moths are attracted to light, but then they're also attracted to sweetness. And you can Google moth bait, and I use the word bait in quotes because bait often infers that you're trying to lure something in to kill it, and this is something that you can use to just use it as an attractant. It doesn't have any poison in it or anything. It's just a means of increasing your chances of seeing these moths up close. So the recipe that I favor always starts with an overripe banana. You know what I'm talking about. These are the ones that are not just, super yellow with some brown spots. They are just almost black. And very, very soft and squishy. You take that overripe banana and you just mash the heck out of it. If you want to throw it in a blender, even better, because what we're creating with this recipe isn't so much going to be chunky or thick. You want it sort of like a slurry, maybe like a thin milkshake consistency. So you take that mashed up banana and you pour in, you notice I said stale beer. You don't want to use up your good stash attracting moths. And in fact, the more funky the beer is, the more aromatic it's going to be, and the more enticing it's going to be for the moth. Now, some recipes call for wine. So if that's your drink of choice and you've got some that you can spare, you could use table wine in the place of the beer. There's also recipes where they use rum, particularly dark rum, because of the high sugar content. So there are other aspects, but there usually is some component of alcohol, not to get the moths sick, drunk, but to attract them, and the alcohol helps, they can pick up those molecules with their antennae and are drawn in. I added some grape jelly because I know how well it attracts things like Orioles, and I always buy the kind that doesn't have any high fructose corn syrup in it. So I toss a little bit of that in there, and then either real maple syrup or dark molasses, either one will work. And these, you notice I didn't put any quantities in there. The consistency is more important than the actual quantity. Again, you're looking for like a thin milkshake. Some people describe it as wallpaper paste, but I don't know how many people put up wallpaper these days. But you paint it on the trees a little bit before dark, and kind of let it sit for a while. This is the result that we got last fall. This is an underwing moth. This is an Ilia underwing. Most of the underwings belong to the genus Catocala, which refers to how their wings are kind of camouflaged above and then bright underneath. The underwing, now if this individual's wings were all the way closed, which actually they were when I first came upon it, you would barely be able to see it. Look at how it is camouflaged so much like bark. It's hard to gauge size here, but this is larger than a silver dollar. These are pretty good sized moths. I would say this wingspan here is over 2 inches. Then the underwings are known for this coloration they have underneath. There's a whole kind of a neat method, I guess you'd call it, that Linnaeus used when he was applying names to the underwing moths that were sent to him for getting a scientific name. He started naming them after the, I guess you'd call them the stages of a woman's dating life. There's the maiden, and there's the young bride. There's the old widow, which actually has black underneath instead of a color. There's all kinds of cool names that these underwing moths have. This moth, underwings tend to fly a little bit later at night. Where we'll see them in the daytime is if you can pick them out on trees, you're better than me. Where I tend to see them is on picnic shelters in forest preserves, and actually out at Hickory Knolls, we'll sometimes have them roosting during the daytime, either on the wooden support structures or sometimes on the rocks of the stone of the fireplace at the picnic shelter. But this moth, we did a moth program last fall. I know some of you attended. Thank you very much for being there then. I think we wrapped that program up around, I don't know, 8:30 or so. And when I went to go home that night, it was about 10. And lo and behold, the underwing moths had showed up. Now, when we did our Nature After Dark program a few weeks ago, I used the same concoction. I had actually taken the leftovers home from the program last September, put them in the freezer, thawed them, and painted a tree. It was 2 weeks ago we did that program. And I was amazed at the variety of moths that were attracted to this concoction. We must have had, I don't know, a half a dozen or more different kinds. And that program was a little bit later. It was about 10 o'clock when we were looking at the bark. But it's a neat way to kind of do a little survey of what might be flying around, things you would have no idea are there in your yard. I will add one note of caution: when you paint moth bait on a tree, it does leave a mark. I suppose you could go back and hit it with a hose if you don't want to have a darkness on your tree, and you certainly don't want to encourage any kind of molds or anything to start growing on your tree bark. But you probably won't be able to get it all off. But the upside is you'll get lots of cool moths coming to your tree. Probably several nights to come. So just one more little fact before we move on, little food for thought. Whenever we talk about the Lepidopterans, Lepidopteran is the order that these insects belong to. Lepidoptera means scaly wings. We always say butterflies and moths, but when we break it down, other states have similar ratios, but here in Illinois, we have 150 species of butterflies, and we have 1,850 species of moths. So more than 10 times as many moths as butterflies. And yet we persist in saying butterflies and moths. So, you know, it's kind of funny. I was talking to my aunt earlier, and my aunt is somewhat famous in her family for always having the smell of mothballs in her house. She's fairly convinced that the only good moth is a dead moth. And I was telling her about the program tonight, and I said, you know, that we have over 10 times as many moths as we do butterflies. And dead silence on the phone. She was brought up to say, you know, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So she didn't say anything at all. But anyway, lots and lots of moths out there, lots of really cool moths, and we are at the near peak of moth activity. So see what you can find. If you see anything, you know, cool, shoot me an email, send me a text. I'd love to find out about it too. All right, we've got just a couple other things I wanted to cover. Betty, if you're out there, this you might recognize. This was a photo that, and this is, I chuckled when I got this picture because it's sort of a similar parallel as to when you wash your car and then a bird plops on it. So, so Betty, you just painted your deck, is that right?
Yep, we had it painted, yep, and it was really empty. You can see in the photo, it's a little, a cart that we have a tomato plant on, right there. Yep, but this was sitting there, and actually farther into the railing there was more, but I just took this group, and we'd never seen that before.
And you thought, doggone it, we just had them painted.
Yeah. What are you doing?
So let's zoom in just a little bit. You can see, you know, what we're talking about. In fact, I think there's another little doodle over here.
Right.
And we thought, all right, what's going on here? It was too big to be a mouse. You know, size is hard to gauge, but we've got some blunt ends here. And we've got kind of a general brown color. We're gonna go with rodent. Now, I almost wrote you back, Betty, to ask whether this was underneath an eave, because there's another creature that will make a similar size dropping, and that would be a bat. But bat droppings tend to be shiny, whereas rodent droppings are kind of dull because they're eating, you know, plant material, a lot of seeds and things. Bat droppings are shiny. They've got insect wings and legs and, you know, the shiny parts of an exoskeleton. So they're, I look at them as the glitter of scat. We'll do a thing on bat scat sometime. But, you know, these were not tapered at all. The other thing is a bat doodle will be kind of tapered on the end, and these have blunt endings to them. So, again, this is for perspective what we saw. We've kind of got two suspects. And if we go back again and we look at how close this is to a post, I think we're talking about a fairly small animal. And I think we're gonna choose the suspect on the left. I'm pretty sure that was a chipmunk. And, you know, for as many chipmunks and squirrels as we have around here, their droppings really aren't that well recognized. Usually, if in fact, I don't know if that's, can't tell on the back of this.
Yeah, there's more of them.
Some, or if that's a sunflower seed. But both of these animals create a blunt-ended brown dropping that is sort of mouse-like, but they go up in size with the size of the animal. So a chipmunk is going to be larger than a mouse, and a squirrel dropping is going to be larger than a chipmunk. I think that's who we had. Betty, I don't know, have you seen any chipmunks coming back to the scene of the crime lately, or?
No. In fact, We have seen a squirrel on our deck, but I can't say that I've seen a chipmunk. We do have chipmunks, of course,
Okay.
but now there was a squirrel that I shooed away. Must have been before we had the deck painted. It was,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. And the other thing, like I said, I didn't take a picture of it. It probably makes sense it's the chipmunk, because down in between the slats of that railing there on the lower portion of it was more of the little droppings. So like behind where the tomato thing is. And
Okay.
so
Good.
down there, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Farther down, but yeah, so I don't know.
It'll be
Think a
interesting
squirrel
to
would go there?
see if your tomatoes will have any bites out of them.
Yeah.
These little guys tend to like
So
that.
far we haven't noticed that, but we'll keep an eye out for sure.
Okay.
But thank you. It's been interesting to investigate it. Have you investigated?
Oh, I love a
Thank
good.
you.
All right, we've got, this one actually was from you too, wasn't it, Betty?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I don't know how many of you other people have heard about this, but in, I believe it was 31 different states were getting packages with seeds in them. And Betty, I'm gonna see if I can pull up your email real quick. The gist of it was that these people hadn't ordered these seeds,
Right.
and yet they were getting them delivered, and the boxes didn't say seeds on them. They were, one of them said jewelry. I think one of them was labeled as some kind of a toy, and it was just all kind of mysterious. So a number of agencies got involved because people started asking questions to get agricultural material like this sent in from overseas. Overseas is kind of a violation of agricultural laws. There's a branch of USDA called APHIS that controls what comes into the country. If you've ever been through customs when you've come from out of the country, they want to make sure you're not going to bring in something that think of all the things that have been introduced here, accidentally, and all the things that have been introduced here on purpose, and all the havoc that some of these things have wreaked. So this was going on. I don't know of anyone personally who had received this, but it's definitely, I checked it out. It's not some, email hoax thing. There's different states, including Virginia, Utah, Washington, Louisiana. Once the government got involved, they were able to figure out what was going on. This Chinese company that remaining nameless so far was sending these packages out because they wanted to be able to create fake reviews on Amazon. And you know how you see on a review, it's a verified purchase. So by sending these things out, they could say that, well, yeah, this went to a real person, and here's the review related to that purchase. It's still a scam, but that's what it was determined to be. It's not the Chinese plot to inundate us with invasive species. It was more their plot to get their products higher ratings than they're worthy of. But it sounds like they're still coming into the country. I don't know that they've been able to pinpoint the source yet or be able to stop it. So if anybody gets any seeds that they did not order, beware, because they aren't really sure. There were different types of seeds. Some of them were kind of large, and you know, you don't want to go just planting seeds in the ground that you don't know what they are, because heaven forbid they take over your yard. Well, that does it for the slides tonight, but I wanted to see if I could, I'm gonna try one more thing here and pull up, let's see if I can find my, where is it? No. Well, I had a browser window open here that I must have closed. I wanted to show you what's going on, but I guess I'll just tell you about it. The bur oak tree that's out in front of the office here has about 6 or so gypsy moth females, and they have been laying eggs now for about a week's time. And I was a little bit concerned about it because in the past we had a custodian who would come on and knock those egg cases down. He's moved to Florida. So I didn't know, you know, is there something we should, let me see if I can share this. Is this gonna work? Not really. Well, kind of. Can you see that? Female gypsy moths don't fly. When they hatch from their eggs, they just kind of hang out on the tree where they're born, and then they will get they'll release pheromones, and male gypsy moths will sense that. Our tree out in front of the office just was all aflutter with male gypsy moths, and now we've got these egg cases being created. I called the Park District arborist because I thought maybe this is something, you know, we need to get on top of. Maybe there's a treatment for it. And if any of you are experiencing something similar in your trees, take note. What he said to do was scrape them off. And that's it, just scrape them off. Squish them, put them in a bucket of soapy water, but there's no need for adding chemicals or anything. He said there's nothing that he's seen that would rate as an infestation at this point. He said six gypsy moth females can produce several hundred eggs, but he said as long as you're able to scrape them and make sure that they don't develop into caterpillars, we shouldn't have a problem. So I thought that was a handy tip worth passing along as well. If you have, they tend to like hardwoods, they particularly like oaks and hickories. So if you see a large white moth, and by large we're talking about an inch and a half or so, the gypsy moth female body is extremely rotund. It's no wonder she can't fly. But if you see a moth that's kind of stationary or her body is kind of bobbing because she's laying these large egg cases, just scrape off the egg case and put it in hot water, hot soapy water, and that should solve your gypsy moth problem. So looks like we got a few minutes left. Does anybody have any questions or stories from the past week? Anybody?
Hey, Pam, with you talking about the Limberlost,
Yes.
it reminded me of the book that's come out, Where the Crawdads Sing.
Oh yeah.
Have you read that one?
I have not.
It's
you know,
kind of similar. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, it's only similar in that the main character pays so much attention to what's in the environment around her. I thought it's a wonderful book. It's you know, got its love interest and its plot stories too, but it really gets you into the environment and the habitat that they are down in the south in the swamps. So I would recommend that to anybody where the
I,
crawdads sing.
I'm gonna make a note of that because just by coincidence, one of our topics next week is going to be crawdads.
Oh, there you go.
I'm gonna make a note. I don't know if I can get the book read in a week, but I can certainly, well, I'll talk to you some more about it. Remember,
Yeah.
Last a week ago Saturday, we participated in an event with the Fox Valley Park District and the Forest Preserve District called the Rusty Rodeo. And it was a targeted approach to eliminating or catching as many rusty crayfish as we could from a forest preserve down in Batavia called Glenwood Park. Now the rusty crayfish, we'll get a little bit more into this next week, but the rusty crayfish is introduced in this area and it's just kind of a bully. It's a little bit bigger, stronger, reproduces at a higher rate, shreds its habitat, the aquatic plants in its environment, kind of wrecks it for all the other crawdads. So I think maybe we can do a book club where the crawdads sing combination with things you can do to help increase or improve the conditions for our native crayfish. We've got 7 species of crayfish in this area. A few weeks ago, I think we talked about burrowing crayfish. The rusty crayfish is pretty much all aquatic. It wouldn't burrow unless we were in a severe drought. I think we'll have some fun with that next week. And speaking of next week, everybody always wants to know what's on the menu for next week. Our main feature next week is going to be on the gray tree frog. So many different things this year. Seems like we seem to be seeing more of them, and I don't know if it's because we do have a few more this year, if maybe conditions were good for them, or if it's that there's so many people that are looking for them, they're in places they wouldn't normally be because they're either isolating themselves or quarantining or getting out and away from people. But we're going to explore the life and times of the gray tree frog, which sometimes is called the green tree frog, but around here we don't have green tree frogs. We'll get a little bit into that too, of what the differences are and what you can expect to find and how you can identify a gray tree frog versus, say, an American toad, because they are similar but very, very different species. Any
Pam?
questions? Yeah, hi, Greg.
Hey, I had just one quick question about the chimney swifts from earlier. You said we don't want to let people know too much that they're out and about or where they are. And could you just tell us why you said that?
Well, it's mainly people get funny when they hear about things living in chimneys, and that being school property. Sometimes word gets out that there's life, all this, what chimney swifts need are a chimney that is unlined and uncapped. And apparently the Davis School chimney meets both of those criteria. But even though chimney swifts they're not, dirty birds, and they don't, wreck anything, still, the idea that something's living in a chimney, sometimes, like the maintenance people might think, oh, we've got to get rid of that. Last year, was it 2 years ago now? Boy, time flies. There was a house in, of all places, Fox Mill, that had chimney swifts in their house. Now, again, to find a chimney that's unlined and uncapped, you're generally looking at an older structure, because today modern construction methods call for putting either a metal liner or a clay liner or something inside the chimney, and then there's going to be some kind of a cap to keep the animals out. but Fox Mill, this house had a very, I mean, you couldn't have built a better chimney for chimney swifts catching their attention. This thing rose like 15 feet above the roof. It actually been hit by lightning a couple of times. It was so tall. Well, it had two, it was lined and it had two kind of pipes coming out the top of it, but the cap had blown off of one of those pipes. And these people were trying to sell their house. They actually had one sale not go through, and they had another buyer. And they thought, oh my gosh, now we've got these birds in the chimney, and you know the buyers, we're gonna have to disclose that we've got this infestation. And they go, hold on, it's not an infestation, it's only one pair. The chimney swifts will only nest one pair to a chimney. So they started off with this feeling of, oh, we got to get rid of them, to a really a feeling of protectiveness, and actually worked with Rich and Marion Miller and King County Audubon, got involved and produced a letter stating just how important chimney swifts are these days. They're insectivores and their numbers are declining. We always want to promote and protect things that eat insects as much as we can. But the upside of the Fox Mill story was that the buyers were fine with letting the chimney swifts complete that particular nesting cycle. Well, the crazy thing too about that Fox Mill chimney is that it was lined. The cap blew off, so it was capped, the cap was gone, and it was lined, but the lining stopped about maybe 4 or 5 rows of bricks above the firebox, you know, where the actual fireplace part of the fireplace is. So they had to fly down, you know, 15 feet to where this little nest was. And there's actually some concern that they wouldn't be able to fly back out, or the babies wouldn't be able to make that initial flight up and out. But they did just fine. They actually fledged, I think it was either 6 or 7 babies out of that Fox Mill chimney. The following year, another house in Fox Mill had a cap blow off, and they have chimney swifts in their chimney as well. And again, it was this, the initial approach was, oh my gosh, we've got things in our chimney, we've got to get rid of them. So I don't know, that's a really long-winded answer, Greg, but it's just sort of a, generally speaking, when people whose job it is to keep things neat and tidy find out that wildlife is living somewhere, they're not that thrilled about it. So hopefully everything will go well. We've had chimney swifts in other local school chimneys, so you know, hopefully this one will go along okay too. The other thing is, I don't know if this is just being used, clearly they're raising young there right now. I don't know if it's going to be used during migration or not. We'll have to keep an eye on it and see. And I'm sure we'll be hearing from folks in Audubon soon about chimney swift sits. I think that's something that can be done in a socially distant sort of a way, but as we get into migration this fall, you can find a chimney that's you know, either close by you or means something to you, and you sit outside of it and you count how many swifts go down into it. So more fun to look forward to as we get into our fall migration.
Thanks, Pam.
All right. Any other questions tonight? All right. Well, if that, next week we've got frogs, we got crawdads, probably have another update on actually stag beetles. They're going to come back into the radar view too next week. We had a little stag incident this past week that I'll share with you. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in tonight, folks. I might get a haircut next week, or I might join a disco band. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
All right. Thank you.
Good night. Be careful going home.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks
Pam.
so much, Pam.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Pam.
Great.
Awesome.
No. Are you?